Picture this. Two of our ancestors are standing on a plain, hundreds of thousands of years ago. One of them sees a lion in the grass, the other one doesn't. And somehow, without touching him, without pushing him, without doing anything but making a sound with his mouth, the first one reaches into the second one's head and puts the lion there. Now they both see it. Now they both run. Stop and think about how insane that is. You cannot open your skull and show someone your thoughts. Your mind is a sealed room. And yet, right now, I am reaching across time and distance and putting ideas into your head using nothing but little vibrations in the air and shapes on a screen. That is what language is. It is the closest thing to telepathy that has ever existed on this planet. So where did it come from? What was the first word? Who said it and why? And here's the part almost nobody tells you. Language may not be something we invented at all. It might be the thing that invented us. This is the story of the most powerful technology our species ever built. A technology made of nothing but breath and sound. And by the end, you're going to realize something a little unsettling. That the voice you think in, the words you use to plan your day and argue with yourself at 3 a.m. were handed to you by strangers who died thousands of years ago. You didn't choose your language. It grew you. Let's go back to the beginning. Or at least, let's try. Because the first problem is a big one. Language doesn't fossilize. When we talk about the discovery of fire, we can dig up ancient hearths and burned bones. When we talk about the first tools, we can hold them in our hands. But a word? A word is a puff of air. It's gone the instant it's spoken. For almost the entire history of human language, there was no writing. Writing only shows up about 5,000 years ago. So for the tens or hundreds of thousands of years before that, every single word ever spoken vanished forever, leaving no trace. That means we can never dig up the first sentence. We will never find a fossil that says, here is where language began. Everything we know we have to reconstruct from indirect clues, from bones, from genes, from the behavior of living animals, and from the structure of language itself. So when I tell you this story, I want to be honest with you. Parts of it are solid science, and parts of it are the best guesses of very smart people who argue with each other constantly. The origin of language is one of the hardest questions in all of science. Some journals literally banned papers on it for 100 years because the speculation got so out of control. But that doesn't mean we know nothing. Let's start with the clue that's staring back at you in the mirror. Look at any other animal. A dog barks. A monkey screams, a bird sings. These are real signals, and they carry real meaning. A vervet monkey, for example, has different alarm calls for different predators. One call for a leopard, another for an eagle, another for a snake. When the others hear the eagle call, they look up. When they hear the leopard call, they run for the trees. That's genuinely impressive. It's a word almost. But here's the wall that every other animal hits. That vervet can scream eagle. It cannot say there was an eagle here yesterday. It cannot say if an eagle comes, run to that tree, not this one. It cannot say I'm worried there might be an eagle. It can only point at the present, at the thing that is happening right now, in front of it. Human language shattered that wall, and it shattered it in a few very specific ways that, as far as we know, no other creature has ever managed. The first is displacement. That's the ability to talk about things that are not here and not now. The lion that isn't here yet. The river that's 3 days' walk away. Your grandmother who died before you were born. Tomorrow. Next winter. A place that doesn't exist. With language, your mind stops being trapped in the present moment. You can send your thoughts into the past, into the future, into pure imagination. You became a time traveler. The second is what linguists call productivity, or generativity. With a small set of sounds and a small set of rules, you can produce an infinite number of sentences. You have almost certainly in your life said sentences that no human being has ever said before in the entire history of the species, and everyone around you understood them instantly. No animal call system can do that. A vervet has maybe a handful of calls, and that's it. You have a bottomless well, and underneath both of those is the deepest trick of all. Structure, grammar. The order of the words carries meaning. The lion ate the man and the man ate the lion use the exact same words, but they are not the same sentence, and the difference is life or death. Human language isn't just a bag of words. It's words arranged into structures, structures nested inside other structures, meaning built out of meaning. That layered, rule-based structure is one of the strongest candidates for the thing that makes human language truly unique. So somewhere, in some group of our ancestors, that machinery switched on. And to understand how, we have to look at the body. Because before you can have language, you need a body that can produce it and a brain that can run it. And when scientists look at the human body, they find something strange, a set of features that look almost like they were redesigned for speech, even though evolution never designs anything on purpose. Start with the throat. In most mammals, the voice box, the larynx, sits high up in the throat. That's actually useful. It lets an animal breathe and swallow at the same time without choking. But in humans, at some point the larynx dropped. It sits lower, and that lower position creates a longer chamber above it, a bigger space to shape sound in. It's the difference between a tiny whistle and a full instrument. That descended larynx is a huge part of why we can make such a rich range of vowels and sounds. But here's the crazy thing. That lower larynx comes with a cost, a serious one. It makes us the only animal that can easily choke to death on its own food. We literally traded away a bit of safety for the ability to make more sounds. Evolution doesn't make trades like that for no reason. Something was pushing hard on the value of sound. Before we go any further, if this is blowing your mind even a little, if you're realizing how strange and improbable your own voice actually is, do me one quick favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach other people who like having their minds bent, and it costs you nothing. Okay, back to it. So we've got the throat. What about the brain? Because sound is just noise until there's a brain that can turn it into language. And here, one clue got very famous, then got a little overhyped, and the real story is more interesting than the myth. The clue is a gene called FOXP2. Scientists found a family where many members had severe trouble with speech and grammar and traced it to a mutation in this one gene. The headlines exploded, "The language gene." And for a while, people talked about FOXP2 like it was the magic switch that turned on human speech. The truth is messier and, honestly, cooler. FOXP2 is not the language gene. There's no single language gene. FOXP2 is a gene involved in the fine motor control and brain circuits that speech relies on. It's one important part in a machine with thousands of parts. And here's the twist. We sequenced the DNA of Neanderthals, our closest extinct cousins, and they had the same human version of FOXP2 that we do. So this piece of the puzzle was already in place long before modern humans showed up. Language wasn't one gene flipping on. It was a slow assembly of many, many pieces. The throat, the brain circuits, the fine control of the tongue and lips, the ability to imitate sounds, coming together over a very long time. Which brings us to the real question. We had the equipment. Lots of animals have impressive equipment. So what actually pushed our ancestors from grunts and gestures into full, open-ended language? What was it for? And this is where the story connects back to something you might have heard me talk about before: fire. Because control of fire gave our ancestors something no other animal had: long, safe, warm evenings. The predators stayed out beyond the ring of firelight. The work of the day was done. And there they sat, a small group of humans, awake in the dark, with nothing to do but look at each other's faces in the flickering light. For the first time, there was time. Safe, social, idle time. And that turns out to be exactly the soil that language needs to grow. So what did they talk about? Here's one of the most compelling ideas, and it comes from an anthropologist named Dunbar. Watch a troop of monkeys or apes, and you'll see them spend hours grooming each other, picking through each other's fur. It looks like hygiene, but it's mostly not about cleanliness. It's about bonding. Grooming is how they say, "I'm on your side. We're okay. You can trust me." It builds the social glue that holds the group together. But grooming has a hard limit. You can only groom one other individual at a time, and it eats up hours of your day. Once a group gets big enough, there just aren't enough hours to groom everyone, and the bonds start to break and the group splits apart. Dunbar's idea is that language evolved as a kind of vocal grooming, a way to bond with many people at once, using your voice instead of your hands. And what do you use vocal grooming for? To talk about each other. Who's trustworthy? Who's a cheat? Who's sleeping with whom? Who did what to whom? In other words, one of the very first and most powerful uses of language may have been gossip. Not poetry, not philosophy, gossip, the reputations of the people around you. It sounds silly, but think about it. Knowing who to trust in a group of 100 people is a matter of survival. Gossip is social information, and social information is power. The campfire wasn't just where we cooked. It was where we downloaded the entire social map of our world into each other's heads every single night. And once you can do that, once you can share what's in your mind, everything changes. Because now knowledge stops dying with the person who has it. Think about what that means. An old woman knows which plants are safe and which will kill you. She knows where the water is in a drought because she survived one 40 years ago. In an animal, all of that knowledge dies with her body. But in a human, with language, she can pour it into the minds of her grandchildren before she goes. Knowledge starts to accumulate. Each generation doesn't have to start from zero. It starts from wherever the last generation left off and adds a little more. Scientists call this the ratchet effect, culture clicking forward, notch by notch, never sliding back, because language holds it in place. No other animal has a real version of this. It is the reason a human today can build on the ideas of a person who lived 1,000 years ago and never met them. Language turned individual brains into one giant connected mind, spread across time. Now, how did the actual sounds start? Here, again, we're in the land of educated guesses, and there are a few big camps. Some researchers think it started with the mouth, with grunts and calls that slowly gained meaning and structure. Others make a fascinating case that it started with the hands. That gesture came first. Think about it. Even now, you wave, you point, you nod. When two people don't share a language, they instantly start using their hands. Great apes gesture to communicate far more flexibly than they vocalize. So maybe the first words were pointed, not spoken, and the voice took over later. Once fire and darkness made it useful to communicate when you couldn't see a hand in front of your face. The honest answer is, we don't know which came first, and it may have been both, tangled together. What we can say is that somewhere in the last few 100,000 years, the pieces locked into place, and a threshold was crossed. Our ancestors went from creatures that could signal to creatures that could speak, that could tell stories, make plans, ask questions, and lie. And that last one matters more than it sounds. Real quick, if you're finding this fascinating, if you want more stories about the hidden origins of the things that made us human, do yourself a favor and subscribe. This channel is building a whole series on it, how we found fire, how we invented language, and a lot more coming, and subscribing is the only way to make sure the next one actually finds you. All right, let's talk about lying, because it's more important than you think. Once you have language, you can say things that aren't true. And that sounds like a bug, but it's actually a sign of something profound. To lie, you have to understand that other people have minds that hold beliefs, and that your words can change those beliefs. You have to model what's going on inside someone else's head. That ability, to think about what other people are thinking, is one of the deepest features of the human mind, and language and that ability grew up together, feeding each other. The same power that lets you warn a friend also lets you deceive an enemy. The same power that lets you describe the world lets you describe worlds that don't exist, which is to say, it lets you imagine. Fiction, religion, plans, promises, laws, money, nations, every one of those things is, at bottom, a shared story. A story that only works because a group of people can agree to believe in the same invisible thing. And you cannot have a shared invisible story without language. So look at what language really is now. It's not just a tool for labeling the things around you. It's the thing that lets a group of humans agree on a reality that isn't physically there. It's how 1,000 strangers can cooperate around an idea. It is, quite literally, the operating system that human civilization runs on. But I saved the strangest part for last. Because there's a question underneath all of this that flips the whole story around. We keep asking, how did humans invent language? But there's a serious case to be made that it's the other way around. That language, in a sense, invented us. Here's what I mean. Ask yourself, what does thinking feel like? For most of us, a huge amount of our thought happens in words. There's a voice in your head right now, narrating. You use language not just to talk to other people, but to talk to yourself, to plan, to remember, to reason, to hold an idea still long enough to examine it. Take language away. And it's not just that you couldn't communicate. A whole layer of your inner mental life would go dark. Many researchers argue that language doesn't just express thought, it reshapes it, gives it structure, makes certain kinds of thinking possible that simply weren't before. And you didn't build that voice, you inherited it. Every word you think with was invented by someone else, refined by millions of mouths across thousands of years, and poured into your head when you were a small child before you had any say in the matter. The grammar you obey without ever having read a grammar book. The metaphors you think are just how things are. The concepts you can even have because there's a word for them. All of it was handed down. In a very real way, you are not the author of your own mind. You are the latest host for a system of thought that has been passed from human to human, like a flame kept alive, for longer than anyone can remember. That's the reframe. We didn't just invent language and then use it. Language got inside us and rebuilt the way we think, and made us into the storytelling, planning, imagining, self-aware creatures we are. A human without language isn't a human with the sound turned off. It's a fundamentally different kind of mind. We became human, in the fullest sense, when we became the animal that lives inside a world made of words. So what was the first word? We'll never know. It's gone, like every spoken word from that deep past. A puff of air that vanished the instant it was made. Maybe it was a name. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was just a sound pointed at a thing that two people agreed to remember. But whatever it was, it started something that never stopped. A chain of voices, unbroken, running from that first speaker all the way down to the voice you're hearing right now, and the voice inside your own head reading along. Every conversation you've ever had, every book, every argument, every I love you and every lie and every joke and every prayer. All of it traces back to some nameless ancestor, sitting in the dark by a fire, who opened their mouth and for the first time put a thought that was only in their head into someone else's. You are the end of that chain. And if you pass your words on, you're not the end at all. You're just another link keeping the flame alive. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person this channel is for. Hit subscribe if you haven't, because next time we're going to dig up the origin of another thing you use every single day and never think about. Until then, keep talking, keep wondering,